For over a decade, the sports world asked the exact same question. What happened to Anthony Kim? When he vanished in 2012, the rumors started immediately. People said his swing was broken. People said he took a multi-million-dollar insurance payout to never play again. But the truth was something nobody wanted to admit. Anthony Kim wasn't just fighting for his golf career, he was fighting for his life. Welcome back to Golf Backstage. Today, we are taking a break from the tour drama to look at one of the most beautiful, heartbreaking, and inspiring stories in sports history. Anthony Kim recently opened up about his 12-year absence, and his words will give you chills. He confessed that he spent years battling severe addiction and dark mental health demons. He admitted that he was surrounded by leeches and scam artists who took advantage of a young kid with too much money and too much pressure. It got so bad that AK admitted there were times he was terrified to even wake up in the morning, not knowing if he would survive the day. But he did survive, and he didn't do it alone. AK didn't come back to golf to win trophies or prove his critics wrong. He came back for two specific people. When asked about his recovery, Anthony Kim delivered a quote about his wife and his daughter that left reporters completely speechless. And it changes the way you will look at him forever. Subscribe and hit the bell right now if you want to hear the exact words that saved Anthony Kim's life. Click that button.
When she ran out onto that green, that was, selfishly, that was one of the most special moment of my life. To my own fault, I made a lot of bad decisions, but the only way I can overcome that is by just dealing with it and hitting it head on. I know that if she wasn't in my life, there's zero chance I'd be playing golf. So I give her so much credit for telling me, this is what you're good at, and you can make a difference in other people's lives if you do succeed.
When a legendary athlete finally completes a massive, impossible comeback, you usually know exactly what they are going to say. You expect the polished PR spin, the tearful thanking of the sponsors, and the cliché quotes about never giving up. But when Anthony Kim stood in front of the microphones this week, fresh off a shocking victory on the LIV Golf Tour, he shattered the standard Hollywood script. After watching his young daughter run onto the 18th green, a moment he called one of the most special of his entire life, he didn't deflect or hide behind a publicist. He looked directly into the camera and said, "I'm a recovering addict, but now I think I'm addicted to making that happen again." He said it calmly, like it was nothing. But if you actually stop and process the weight of those words, you realize this isn't just a story about a guy finding his golf swing. He is actively framing his competitive drive, his hunger, and his very reason to get out of bed, using the exact language of addiction and survival. That is not a throwaway media line. That is a man telling the world exactly how he rewired his psychology to stay alive. And that is where the real story begins.
I'm motivated by negativity, so it's been very weird. But I feel like a lot of people saw their own families, their own struggles in me, and I think that's why it got kind of the reception that it did.
To truly understand the gravity of what Anthony Kim said, you have to remember the ghost he used to be. Before the disappearance, he was a 22-year-old absolute phenom. He went undefeated in Ryder Cup singles. He possessed a swagger and a violent swing that genuinely made analysts compare him to the greatest players in the history of the sport, without an ounce of embarrassment. And then he completely vanished. For over a decade, the public narrative was incredibly simple. A talented kid suffered a bad knee injury, cashed an insurance policy, and faded into obscurity. But the reality was infinitely darker. The knee injury was just the catalyst. What followed was a terrifying descent into what he now openly calls bad decisions. He recently admitted that he put himself in incredibly dangerous situations, entirely by his own fault. The absence was never really about the physical knee. It was about losing a battle with his own demons in the dark.
Whether it's you, whether it's your uncle, whether it's your dad, whether it's your child, everybody has issues. And I think for golf, it was good because
When a man spends 10 years hiding from the world, it takes a massive, undeniable force to pull him back into the blinding spotlight. For Anthony Kim, that force wasn't a lucrative contract offer from Live Golf, and it wasn't a sudden desire to win trophies. He stated point blank that if it wasn't for his wife, there is zero chance he would be playing professional golf today. She looked at a man who was broken and told him that he still had the power to make a difference in other people's lives if he succeeded. He openly added the word sobriety to his list of priorities, right next to golf and family. The moment he used that specific word, the entire frame of this comeback permanently shifted. This is no longer a sports achievement. It is a story about a man crawling back from a place that most people simply do not survive.
bad decisions are a large part of the reason people are in bad spots. And I think everyone can relate to that. So just seeing that other people are changing to better their life, better their family's life, is one of the reasons that I wanted to come back to golf.
Here is where the situation gets incredibly complicated. The story that Anthony Kim is telling about himself and the story that the corporate golf world wants to sell are running on two completely different tracks. LIV Golf desperately needs this to be a clean, linear, highly commercial redemption arc. They need the emotional footage of the daughter on the green and the tears of joy, because that specific narrative validates their league to the casual sports fan. It is the perfect, marketable sports movie structure. But Anthony Kim is not acting in a movie. Recovery is not linear. He is operating from a highly fragile, deeply personal, psychological framework, where the stakes are literally life and death. He knows exactly how close he came to losing everything, admitting that just 2 years ago, his life was flat out terrible. When a corporate marketing agenda collides with a man's raw, daily fight for sobriety, those tracks eventually diverge. If you want to know how he actually survived the grueling process of rebuilding his game, listen to the most terrifyingly honest quote he gave all week. "I'm motivated by negativity." That is not the quote of a man who has found complete inner peace. That is the quote of a man who has learned how to weaponize his trauma and point it at a target. He isn't claiming that he is fully healed and ready to smile for the cameras. He is admitting that he is using the doubt, the whispers, and the dark years as highly combustible fuel. Dustin Johnson, who had a front row seat to this comeback, noted that during the darkest stretches of the return, almost nobody outside of Kim's immediate circle actually believed he could pull it off. He had to rebuild himself in total isolation, converting the world's skepticism into a lethal competitive edge. But relying on that specific type of fuel comes with a massive, unavoidable risk.
Maybe other than me and maybe him and the guys on our team that believed in him. I don't think anyone else did. So I think it was just a really special day, and obviously for him, it's with all the hard work that he's put into the game over the last couple years. I know he was talking about when it kind of clicked for him. I mean, to me, watching him go through the promotions event, knowing that he had to play well, or he wasn't going to have a place to play. Playing well in that event, finishing in the top three, because that was really the only choice you had. I mean, that to me was where it kind of clicked, where, okay, I think AK's got his game back.
History tells us that athletes who rebuild their empires entirely on the fuel of being doubted eventually run into a massive problem. The fuel has an expiration date. What happens to Anthony Kim's motivation when the negativity completely stops? What happens when the media stops doubting him, the fans fully embrace him, and he suddenly misses 3 cuts in a row. When the external villains are gone, who does he fight? He has deliberately tied his golf game, his comeback, and his public persona directly to his sobriety and his family. That is an astronomical amount of emotional weight to carry onto the first tee every single week. He is essentially building a platform out of his own wreckage to act as a mirror for other people struggling with addiction. It is incredibly noble, but it creates a terrifying pressure cooker, where a bad stretch of golf feels like a personal failure to his family and his recovery. Anthony Kim said something this week that most professional athletes would never dare to say without a PR filter. He used the exact language of his darkest, most destructive years to describe his greatest joy. He traded one addiction for the addiction of seeing his daughter run onto the 18th green. Whether that is the most profound, brutally honest thing a golfer has ever said, or the earliest warning sign of a pressure system that hasn't fully formed yet, is a question that nobody can answer right now. Anthony Kim knows better than anyone how incredibly fragile this all is. The golf world is just happy to have him back, but the real battle is only just beginning. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Can Anthony Kim sustain this incredible comeback? Or is the emotional pressure of carrying this narrative going to be too much?